Yep, I know. Don't get mad. Just take a breath, breathe it in, feel it, let it out slowly, and everything will be all right. Because when it comes to the superhero debate, you're all going to have your favorite ones. It's all going to probably tie into your childhood and who you liked, who you didn't like. Maybe even the first one that you saw. Like I know a load of people like Spider-Man because they could relate to him when they were a kid because he was a teenager and he didn't really want to be a superhero and he has some girl troubles and confident issues. And if you're going through puberty, that makes loads of sense. I, however, warmed to Batman, and as I promised somebody on my Patreon now, for ages, I'm finally going to talk about it. But hello, my name is Simon Miller. Welcome to my random vlog series that I do now where we talk about everything. It all started about mental health, apprehension, anxiety, and life, and you can go watch all of them. But throughout them, we've evolved, and now we're just talking about a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about, and you guys let me know what you want to talk about as well, using the links in the description on the screen or wherever they are. I can't remember what I put on these. Basically, at Simon316. Or I do have a Patreon as well, patreon.com/Simon316, where you can support all my personal projects and also get in touch with me and say, hey, Simon, I would like you to do this. So, yes, I mean, look, I saying Batman is my favorite superhero sounds a little bit ridiculous because I like lots of superheroes. I like the Avengers, I like Superman, I like Spider-Man. I never really got on with. He was never really my guy. But if we were going to start breaking it down and someone gave me a list and said, Simon, who is the best superhero? I would say Batman. Absolutely. I just would. And yeah, someone for a while has been asking me, Simon, why? Because I do. Like when I was really, really young, because I'm pretty much a heart on my sleeve kind of a guy. I kind of knew pretty, like I said, when I was quite young, what I liked. I like Metallica and I like metal music. I like pro wrestling. I like lifting weights. And I like Batman. They were kind of my four pillars that I balanced everything on. In terms of Batman, I can't tell you how I first... I mean, it's probably the movie, the 1989 movie with Michael Keaton, done by Tim Burton. That's probably how I got introduced to him, just because I don't think I knew what comics... I knew what a comic book was, but I don't think I was introduced to them before I'd seen that movie. Like, I was tiny when that movie came out, so it wouldn't have been until a few years later. But yeah, I did, so I saw that, I think, but then I did start getting into all the graphic novels and stuff. So I got Year One, I got The Dark Knight Returns, and, I'm not going to sit here and list everything that I've read. You either know or you don't know. You don't need, like I say, just a bunch of bullet points from me. But the reason that I'll talk about the Dark Knight trilogy as well in a minute, but the reason that I really warmed to him is because he wasn't really like any other superhero that there was, because as the argument goes, he's not even a superhero, he's just a rich dude that has a bunch of gadgets. So that was interesting anyway, because we talked about Spider-Man and being able to relate to him if you're younger. But that was the cool thing about Batman, because you were like, well, in some universe, if I had all this money and I had all this technology and these gadgets were real, that was kind of the far-fetching stuff, I could be Batman. Now, what would actually happen is I'd go out there and I'd do my first Batman, defense protection situation or whatever you want to call it, and I would get killed and stabbed and I'd die. That was what would happen in the real world. But it wasn't just that as well. It was when the more you get to read about him, the more you realize it kind of is a mature comic book, or at least the themes are very mature. And again, it doesn't matter if you have an immature comic book either, but it was just my personal preference. And the real thing that I liked was, as you get into it and you start to read more, is you start to realize, and they tease this in Batman Begins. You get that a lot in the graphic movies, but I think that was the novel, sorry. But in the movies, I think, or the films, that was the one that really got this the most. And it was a shame they didn't push it more. And that was, like Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist, millionaire that goes out and spends all this money, is very audacious and very big and bravo. That is, that is the fake person. That is the face he puts on to the world, because deep down he's arguably depressed, he's struggling, never gets over the death of his parents, and the way he finds comfort, I guess, or the way he finds to get through each day to deal with that is by becoming Batman. Again, it's called an alter ego, but I think a lot of us would agree that read him or watch him or whatever, that is who he is, that is who he has become. And he can only be this person, as he stalks the streets of Gotham at night time. But in the day, he can't do that. I mean, you argue he probably could, but going with the law, he can't do that. And so he has to keep up appearances also to hide his secret identity. And he does that by being, and this is the really cool thing, and kind of what ties into these vlogs, what society deems that he should be. Head of Wayne Enterprises, in charge of millions and billions worth of equipment and companies and stock, and they expect him to see it. He's expected to be out at parties and being just a rich, wealthy dude that's living the life of luxury. But he's not. And I always thought that was really cool. I always thought that was something really you could grab hold of. And and kind of, extract from a little bit. Like it had depth there. It's like an onion. The more you pull back, the deeper the layers would become, and the more you would understand. And there was just so much to that, as far as I was concerned. And I'll be the first to admit some of the villains aren't great, like Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Man-Bat, Calendar Man. It kind of goes up here and then swiftly comes back down. But then there's other people like Hush and Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze especially gets a bad rep. I mean, I loved Arnold. I hate Batman and Robin the movie. I hate it. I think it's an abomination. It doesn't get Batman right at all. For all the reasons I've just said. I think the cool thing about Batman is the mature adult themes and this, split personality and how you struggle to deal with issues that get put in front of your life, especially when you're a child. How can that affect you mentally, and what do you do when you bring that into later life? Batman and Robin went the opposite way and obviously cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, but that's why I love him. And also, there is still hints there about the character, because obviously Mr. Freeze is like that because he's trying to save his wife. That's all he cares about. So really, his motives are very good, but he's so desperate to save the person that he loves that he goes the other way and he does evil stuff. That's a badass character. That's a badass villain. Like, there's layers there. There's depth. You can understand, and maybe you can even, empathize with him. You can't sympathize with him unless you've got somebody on ice right now. But Arnold Schwarzenegger played it so ridiculous and so stupid. I couldn't help but get into it. I really don't like that movie. I think it's terrible. And I think I'd probably stick Batman Forever in there too, just because, I don't know, it's okay, but it's a little bit silly. I kind of like it I almost like it without the context of everything else. However, my point being, moving on to Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, that's why I think those three movies are so good, because it takes everything we've just talked about and it does make sure that each little idea is presented through Christopher Nolan's work. So you have Rachel Dawes mention, this is your marks. I mean, they do it a bit on the nose, but that's fine. It's a movie. It's a Hollywood film. I get it. And The Dark Knight obviously has the rise of the Joker, where he's portrayed very well, and that's going back to the villains we talked about earlier. The Joker is such a good villain, and Heath Ledger played it so well. And I'll be the first to admit, I was a guy that was like, Heath Ledger, are you kidding me? I didn't go all crazy and vitriolic on the internet, but I certainly was a bit dubious that was the right decision. I'm so happy he proved me wrong. He absolutely deserved that posthumous Oscar that he won. It's a tour de force performance, and it's, every good guy needs a great bad guy, and that's why Christian Bale and Heath Ledger work so well. And I like The Dark Knight Rises too. I like Batman. I like Christian Bale's Batman voice. I know that's a point of contention. I like Bane's voice, Tom Hardy. I know that's a point of contention. But I could buy into what they were trying to do. It made it feel unique. Like, what did you want? You want another bad guy that just comes on and goes like, I will beat you, Batman. Like, we've seen that. And Bane is meant to be some kind of psychotic being, or at least someone that's, especially the way it's portrayed in that film, as someone that's a bit mentally unstable. And that's why he spoke like that. I even went to see Mission Impossible in IMAX because they said they'd show you the intro to The Dark Knight Rises. That's how much I loved it. I do love the Mission Impossible movies, but I specifically went to IMAX. And I got to see the cut before they redubbed his voice. And you can't hear a word he's saying. And I like that too. It doesn't work for a movie that's went on to make over $1 billion. I think it did. But it certainly... in terms of what art can be in creativity, I love the fact you couldn't understand it because it made him more terrifying. I can't even understand what this guy is saying, and yet he's kicking people out of planes. So I understand, and going back to my original point, that villains can be quite... you can shift away. I mean, Hush got represented really well in the video games. I think he was in Arkham City. I think it was Arkham City when he was really, really good. By the way, the Rocksteady games, I love them as well. Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight. Again, I love Arkham Knight, and that seemed to be the one that everyone was down on too. But yeah, it's just Batman himself. I just think there's a real interesting lesson and a real... Because, the quintessential superhero is Superman. Good to the core and does nothing wrong, and that's still a good message to have, of course it is, but in terms of a character that you want to read and you want to take on stories and you want to see evolve on the page and on a movie screen, I just thought Batman was so cool, and I thought he had so much to him, and I thought you could, there were different, you could sort of get an epic vibe from him and a oh man, I got to go out there and do this and I got to be successful vibe, but you could also get a melancholy vibe and a sad vibe and a difficult vibe, and that is absolutely represented in the comics too. Probably The Dark Knight Returns does it best, when, if you don't know, Batman, basically comes back from retiring after a while as an old man, and he really struggles, and he's angry, and he's pissed off, and he can't do what he used to do, which again, ties into life. You can't fight time, and we're all heading to the same direction, and I'm sure if, you try and do something that you did in your 30s and you're very successful at, maybe take some time off and come back in your 50s, or wherever old he is in that comic, I don't even know if it says, top of my head, then it would do that. And that is what I mean. It created these experiences and these environments that you may not be able to relate to directly, but it made sense. And he was humanized. And it was that humanization that I always latched onto. So yeah, I mean, it sounds so cheesy to say, but it's always been something there with Batman. It's always been something I've been passionate about and I love. And, you know, when the movies come out, I always make sure I go see the very first showing on the very first day and all this kind of stuff. Like, he does mean a lot to me. That sounds absolutely ridiculous, and I get it, but hopefully if you're watching this, you understand that too. You know, I've invested in him, even though he's fake and he's not real, like pro wrestling. And yeah, it's just, I just love it, and I'll always love it, and I don't know, I can't even explain it sometimes. He's both a role model and also maybe a role model of not how to be as well, considering some of the things that he's done. Anyway, that's kind of why I like Batman. I don't like to ramble on too much of these things. But there's a comment box below. Let's get the conversation going. Let's keep it respectful. Let me know your favorite superhero. Let me know about Batman. Like, how did you get into comic books and stuff? Obviously, Stan Lee passed away last year. That absolutely sucked. You know, pretty much responsible for a lot of what we get these days, if not everything. You could certainly argue that. And yeah, I think to tie it all up, comic books and comic book movies, and as we've seen with the massive success Marvel Studios are having, they do create a great way to just escape and just forget about any problems you may have. And anything that does that, I don't think can be a bad thing. I know a lot of people crap over comics, but you read some good ones, especially graphic novels, like Year One. And they are wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. And the DC movies, yeah, Batman vs Superman I think is watchable for all the wrong reasons. Same with Justice League. Haven't seen Aquaman as of yet, but focusing on the Batman ones. And I'll be intrigued to see what is next for the Batman film. I know that Ben Affleck's not involved anymore. Never thought Ben Affleck was that great. That's no knock on him. I never thought he was right for that kind of stuff. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on. Like I say, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Said that twice. Use that comment box below. If you want to head over to my Patreon, there's a link in the description below. Anything like that helps. It's how I support all of this content. And yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with something else. But in the meantime, enjoy your evening. What was that? Just a noise.